What is good, NIO family? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and this one I want to break down what's going on with the overall market and what's going on with NIO stock. I'm also going to break down what the big money investors have been doing with NIO, why on earth most of them are continuing to buy more NIO shares, and what on earth the latest 13F filing reports are telling us about what big money, big investors, the massive trillion-dollar companies are doing to NIO. But before I break anything down about all this information, before I talk about what on earth is happening to NIO stock, let me just mention a couple of things before starting. I am firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. We sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account. You're guaranteed 5 free stocks with a $50 cash reward. The offer ends in just 13 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, guys, so looking at NIO, it was down 7% for the day on Friday. Not necessarily their faults because Evergrande has fallen, filing for bankruptcy in the New York courts, and that is not good news for them. This was outside of NIO's control as we're starting to see more and more hardships continuing to form in China. Now, despite that happening, I just want to remind you all that going back for the last few weeks, like I told you guys yesterday, NIO was bullish. You guys remember a few weeks ago, near the end of July, NIO was pumping and pumping and pumping, continuing to hold up with the all-time high deliveries record. NIO managed to go all the way up to 16 from $10 just a few weeks prior. So NIO is looking very strong, at least back then it was. And then as of recent, it started selling off. That's because the whole market started selling off. If you look at SPY, for example, look at SPY compared to NIO. What has SPY been doing for the last few weeks? Since August, it's been selling off. The whole market is following this trend. Look at Apple. Apple came down pretty hard for the last couple of weeks. This is also what's dragging the market down, acting as an anchor. Look at Tesla. We know Tesla has relatively strong fundamentals, even though their guidance is not the best. It's been just straight up selling off for the last couple of weeks. But the real question is, what about NIO? How is NIO looking? Well, it's following the trend. NIO is a stock with a positive beta. And if anything, it's not actually selling off as hard as other companies out there. It's just that on Friday, it started selling off a little bit harder because of this bad news that came out. If it wasn't for that, it wouldn't be like that horrible compared to like others out there. Other stocks have been dropping since, the very end of July, going into like August, the very start of August. NIO started dropping around like the 7th of August is where it really started dropping. It was actually trading in a range for the first like week before it started slowing down more as time went on. More concerns involving China played a big role too. But here's the thing about NIO. The real question that comes to mind is, why on earth is it that when fundamentals were this strong, why on earth is it that people are losing their minds over the way the share price is moving? And that is something that goes on with it. There are people that are saying that NIO is just a horrible company and this and that. But the question is, if it really is such a bad company, then how come the majority of firms are buying more NIO shares? Now, are all of them doing that? Not necessarily, but most of them are doing that. And that's why I want to look at this data right here and talk about the top investors that are betting on NIO stock. So what happened was, the latest 13F filing reports came out for the second quarter. And as of the second quarter, the end of it, we actually have some new data, and it's looking very, very good for them based off the reports. And also, it's not just about the second quarter. We can actually see some later things that came out. This is all going to be important anyways. So looking at this, okay, when it comes to the way NIO was moving, as of right now, the data suggests that a lot of these massive firms are not necessarily selling NIO shares. Some of them have sold part of their positions, but most of them are still holding or buying even more. I'm going to break down exactly who they are and why this is important. So, one to remember is that despite how much NIO was dropping, the fundamentals of NIO are still quite strong. There's a very, very good chance that NIO could continue to pump. Now, why do I say it could pump more? That's because the fundamentals are improving. Once the situation in China improves, once NIO starts to give us stronger deliveries, which they are most likely going to do for the second half of this year, it has so much potential to pump, in my opinion. So looking at the big firms out there, first off, we have CYVN Investments. They basically have 125 million NIO shares. They actually are owned by Abu Dhabi, which is some very, very bullish news. And they actually bought NIO in July of 2023, right before the thing started taking off. So that was great. But are they going to sell this? I don't see them doing that. I think they're in for the long term, and they know NIO is going to continue to pump. Now, that is bullish. I'm not just saying this for like the short term, the longer term, for many months out, many years out, that's extremely bullish. They're not going to buy into a trash company, guys. It's just common sense. Then, secondly, we have Tencent Holdings. Okay, they own another 124 million shares, but they did actually decrease their NEO position by about 40 million, according to the report. They may have done this due to like other hardships in China, wanting to reposition and other things like that. But even if you do criticize them for doing this, there is a chance that they could have tried to sell it to other investors, wanting to get more diversity and things in uh, out of the way, basically. But remember, okay, you could criticize them for selling 40 million shares, or you could be happy because they're holding 124 million shares still. They're still holding it. They haven't really sold everything off. They're still invested in NIO. Now, we also saw Bailey, Gifford, and Co. They have about 120 million NEO shares. They sold off about 600,000, but nothing too crazy. That is nothing compared to holding almost 120 million. And it looks like they're going to continue to hold them. The investment management firm is just going to continue to hold them. That is still bullish in a way because for the long term, they want to hold on to 120 million shares. They're not just like getting rid of all of them. And the companies sell off a small part of their positions all the time. You always hear about Cathie Wood selling Tesla and buying back in. They do this to reposition, look at other opportunities, look at the different sectors moving in the markets. There are all sorts of reasons. This has nothing to do with them dumping NEO because they dislike it, because they're holding 120 million and they sold off only 600,000. Now, here are the two big ones that are very important. BlackRock, this is huge, one of the largest companies on the planet. They have 67 million shares of NEO, almost that much. And they just bought another 5 million shares. I'm going to round this up about 5 million. They added another 5 million shares of NEO, investing tens of millions into NEO once again, very, very recently. That is once again more bullish news. Why are they buying so much NEO? If NEO is a trash company, it's going to go back to like $7, $6, and $5 for good. Why are they still buying NEO as it dips? Could it be because they want to see the future of this company? They see strong fundamentals and they have a lot of good reasons to do so. Why are they holding 67 million shares and they're not going to give them up? They see something in this company. They know the stock has so much potential. They're still very, very bullish, in my opinion. And last but not least, we have Vanguard, the other giant, the giant mutual fund out there. They have 48 million NEO shares in total, and they recently bought another 389,000 shares. Once again, investing millions into NEO again. So here's my question. If they're buying all these shares, if BlackRock and Vanguard of all things are just buying and buying and holding and buying and holding, that makes me, or at least that's one indication that other big firms are invested into NEO. They like it. Yes, one of the biggest ones that sold was Tencent. They actually sold about 40 million, but they're still holding at the same time 124 million, right? So the majority of them, every single one of these big giants is either holding were continuing to buy. And if they did sell, they're still holding a big chunk of their shares. They're still holding on to them, right? Companies sell off small parts of their positions, even if it's like 10, 20%, just to reposition, put their money somewhere else, maybe for hedging, other things like that. It happens all the time. Maybe they will also maybe anticipate some downside for NEO and they just sold a little bit and they want to rebuy the dip later on. There's so many other reasons, but they have a large stake in NEO combined, the top five holders. And most of them are just continuing to bet on the company, buying more and holding. So I consider this bullish news. The biggest bullish piece of news was Abu Dhabi basically owning this investment firm that bought almost 125 million shares. That is huge, 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 huge stuff. They're not going to bet on a loser. I think NEO has so much potential for its expansion, deliveries, not to mention the NEO phone that could be coming out very soon. There's so much potential in this company, and the large majority of these companies are still holding or continuing to buy more. Some of them did reduce their positions, but most of them are just continuing to buy. So out of all of them, basically this shows us that 3 out of 5 are basically just buying more, and all of them are just holding onto their most of their shares, and just a couple of them sold a tiny position or like a little bit more, but for the most part they're all holding on, and that's some more good news. Now, as far as NIO goes in terms of its data, I just want to mention that the short interest has been declining a little bit, which is a decent sign. There could be more short covering later on. NIO is due for a bounce. It could drop a little bit more because of some bad news before it does try to bounce, or it could try to bounce from here as it is forming a bullish divergence. But I will talk more about the overall market in NIO in my video for tomorrow. But I just want to make it clear the majority of the big dogs out there are still betting on NIO. They're still invested into it and they still believe in the company's future. All right. So thank you all so much for listening. Have an absolutely spectacular rest of the day. Remain calm, cool, and collected. And I'll see you guys in the next one. NIO to the moon as the long term is still incredibly bright. And peace out.